Please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
All board members present, along with the principals, superintendent Winter, and Ms. Knopf.
A motion for adoption of the agenda
I so move.
and a second.
Second.
Sorry, who made the motion?
I second.
I did.
All right, you're on speaker here.
We just asked for a motion for the approval of the agenda. We got a second. Any additions, subtractions, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Item 5 would be communications recognition, open forum report.
We had a number of people here discuss some issues that we have kind of discussed already. We have a few new ones we'll have to kind of talk about. So good discussions.
Moving on to item 6, board committees. Buildings and grounds. That was a working.
Working
No,
on,
2 working meetings.
yep, with preview of some projects to do this spring yet. Mainly the gymnastic pit and the, starting blocks, cool, thank you. And then we met with a group of representation from the city of Melrose. We talked about getting together, talking about like projects down the road.
District technology.
I went to that one. Steve reported that the speakers' mics are in and the feedback has been great. The teachers are loving it. They would have now had their security survey by now. I think Greg's got that covered. They're still waiting for computers for the industrial tech computer lab. Like everything else, it's somewhere out there. They've gotten 18 of the 35 and I'm not quite sure where the rest are. So they're hoping they're gonna come. They were supposed to come in last summer, so. Let's see. Talked about needing to back up, the old server needs to be replaced. Security cameras, there's some of those that need to be replaced because of their age. Basically, that was about it. Steve's looking at the budget and they're checking into what programs teachers use, what they still need, what they maybe would like something different, so they're in the process of doing that.
How much is the server?
Don't ask them what they didn't ask.
The servers usually run about $30,000-$35,000, depending upon the size of the server and.
Because apparently SOC's second server or backup is here and ours is there.
Yeah.
So that if something goes, like if we're all the way down, there's a backup over there. They do it the opposite way, so. Like I said, he didn't have the whole budget down. He'll do that in one of these following meetings and it'll all be listed on how much everything.
PTA.
Yes, for the PTA, primarily we're discussing the fun run that is coming in May, which is a fundraiser, which they are doing themselves rather than having a company run it, which they've done in the past. That was more costly. Mrs. Kvistad did a lot of work toward contacting sponsors. They're giving kids t-shirts with the sponsor's name sheet. They have $4,700 for that. And They, part of the reward for the kids doing that, they're having something fun called Ninja Warrior, which is kind of an interactive game inflatable thing. Gonna bring in for the kids. And like an obstacle course for them. The classes will take turns going down there. Funded by the PTA. And also just wrap up on the Himker Zoo that the PTA brought in for the elementary. The kids really love that in the auditorium there with the animals that they brought in, and also looking to roller skating in May.
West Central Ed.
They're getting ready for their summer program. ALC would run in June and July, Beacon will run in July and August. They are doing some more training. They are also working on teaching positions, special ed teachers, that kind of thing, because they're also having issues with staffing. Their strategic planning is done. They approved the school calendar, hopefully. They tried to drive it as much as they can with all 4 districts. So, that was about it, I think.
Community Ed Advisory.
We both did, we
It was on the same night as the working session.
were unable to be there.
What's that?
Buildings and grounds, I think it was.
Yeah.
Oh, it was the same night as.
Yeah.
Buildings and Grounds.
Yes.
Professional development.
I did the middle school, high school, they were on the same day, same time, whatever, so Becky's got elementary. Kind of just talked about what they were doing for this staff development day we just had, also talking about getting together and working on the whole plan, then it would be all staff development, K-12 would work on that. We're just kind of talking about, what, just get started on next year, meet some of the needs of this teaching staff and some of the paras also, so. It was just kind of a short one and, yeah, getting ready for the next big one.
Right, and at the elementary one that I subbed in on, they discussed what the March in-service would be. And then having to do with science standards, special ed, some assistive technology review, ECSE and pre-K conscious discipline. So that was from the March. And then they also set a date to develop a 3-year plan for professional development. There's certain relicensure requirements that teachers have that everyone needs, things like the mental illness, suicide prevention, cultural competency, reading, those things. And so they discussed how to best offer those as scheduling that out to avoid doing it too often and yet with new hires and things. Just looking at more of a 3-year plan to be able to predict that a little bit better. And they talked about continuing to implement review and reflect on the phonics, reading, and grammar components. One of the challenges to setting up that 3-year plan for professional development will be to get volunteers to develop the plan, but just the importance of that broad view, forward thinking, trying to make a real effective use of that professional development time.
All right. Moving on to administrative reports.
Yes, Dr. Heller, board members. 3 or 4 things that I'd mentioned that you've seen already. Been working on the course survey information. It's been analyzed. The schedule for that, the scheduling for the master schedule will begin here shortly. Prom details, April 30th, that's rolling around the corner already. Today was the first day of 4th quarter. Let the good times roll is the theme this year. I met with seniors when they came back from their open campus. We discussed a little bit of graduation night, lock-in, et cetera. I'm just seeking feedback in those areas and let students know that they should seek their student council people to give feedback to them, or if they wanted to come and ask me or tell me what they were thinking, they could do that. And finally, We did get some feedback regarding senior awards night. That'll be May 18th, 7:30. And feedback basically was they prefer to kind of leave it the way it is, or the way it was prior to COVID. But I think they also said, let's just do it with the seniors, freshmen, sophomore, and junior invitees. They really only were there for one thing and did a lot of this. And some of the seniors even commented, I hated that. And just having to sit around for that. So we'll try to award or get some feedback and honor them or award them a little bit differently, maybe in-house. So
Will you still be taping it at all?
I think we're gonna try to tape it,
Okay.
yeah, so that
Others can-
others can, yeah, that was the plan. So, but yeah, ready, set, go, I guess, fourth quarter.
Thank you.
All right, just touch on a few things that I have on the report. During the month of March on Wednesdays, the middle school, high school has been doing hat day where students pay $1 to wear a hat. Proceeds are going to the Schmitz family, so that's been a positive thing. We've had a lot of students donate more than $1 and donate money without even wearing a hat. Other thing, the middle school that's coming up, the sixth graders will be going on a field trip to the state capitol and then hopefully attending a Twins game after that. That was something we had planned 2 years ago before we were shut down. And we finally have the opportunity to go this year with taking the sixth graders. And it's been many years since the sixth graders have been to the state capitol. So we're looking forward to that. And MCA's testing season starts next week for a couple grade levels, so. Getting towards the end of that, yep.
Right, good evening. The elementary really reported that they did have a great year, reported about the professional development last Friday. You know, you think standards isn't that exciting, but definitely was a good session. They really did unpack the science standards and dug in and had a great morning working on that. We are thankful for PTA that we do the fun run. The kids haven't heard all about it yet. It will be coming, all that information, and so they're really looking, I know they'll be excited that that is back and getting to be able to do it out on our track, our goal with Weather Cooperate, so we're looking forward to that. And then in my report too, I just put in about access. We do report to the staff and want to report to you as a school board also what our programs are doing. And we are seeing we are reaching goals, our access behavior goals. We had 2 in the report and we reached the first one so far because that one we do measure from winter to winter because we had to submit our application in the winter. So we had to start from there and go from one winter to the next winter. And so we did reach that goal, which was great. And it's looking like we are projecting that we will reach that second goal of reducing the number of fix-it tickets and office discipline referrals. So we are happy about that. And then so far in access, we've had 7 students reach their goals and exit out of the behavior plan, their behavior access. And then the win room, we've had 7 students that have reduced their goals and 1 that has completely exited, and we are projecting that those 7 will reach their goals too by this spring. So definitely that win room, we're thankful to be able to continue that, and so we thank the board for that. We started with a grant and then the district supported it after that, and this is our 3rd year, and we definitely appreciate being able to be part of ANSYS because it is impacting students K through 12 definitely, or K through 11 in the academics and behaviors, so thank you.
Mr. Winter?
Last week, I attended the C Executive Committee. I've been on the Executive Committee for the past 3 years. And every spring, when it gets towards spring, we talk about the membership dues. They have not raised the dues for the past couple of years because of the pandemic. There was a lot of discussion, and they will bring the recommendation to the full committee this spring to increase dues next year by 2%. And for a district our size, that probably totals about $75. I'd have to go back, but it's under $100. The another quick note on that. They are moving the C organization. Deb Griffiths is retiring. The big thing about the move is they don't really have a place right now. The building that there currently is, if you're familiar at all with the fairgrounds, it's right on the south side of the fairgrounds. It's kind of a nice building that MASA has owned for quite a long time. They sold it because they were going to redefine how they staff and do different things with a lot of staff being able to work at home, so they don't need a big building like that anymore. They made a very good profit on that building as well. So because MASA sold the building, C is now looking for another place to go to. And we also talked a lot about some of the things that are going on in the legislature right now that we'll talk about in our non-action part of the meeting. Something that was referenced by Lee in the technology committee, we did have an information data and network security assessment done here last week. If you think of it, and I think the best analogy was, we have security in our building. We put in new security measures in our building. Well, the same thing needs to be done for technology. And for anybody that deals with technology, you'll know that a lot of people are moving to multi-factor authentication. So when I would log into our SMART program, I used to be able to log in with a password. Now I got to log it in, I got to hit a thing, and they send me a code to punch in there just to make sure it's me. So it is like building security. We can really tighten things down just like we can building security, but you don't want to tighten it down too far. So we're going to have to find that balance. So we'll find out after a lot of meetings all day last week, meeting with a number of different members of the administration and other people, just to kind of see where we're at and where we can go with creating a better, tighter security system for our data and other things we do with technology. That was put on by ECMEC, an organization that I was a part of in a different district as superintendent. They do a really nice job.
They didn't find any huge holes.
Not any huge holes, nothing that was uncommon, but there's some things that we could probably do pretty quickly to really tighten things down. But they're going to come back with some recommendations as well. And we do continue to get some grant opportunities through the ESSER funds. We heard of a different grant that came up a couple weeks ago that Aaron and I initially worked on, and Terrell and Amy stepped in to provide the educational data. I'm assuming we're going to get that grant, and that will help pay for summer school after July 1st of this year. So we will continue to pursue those grants as they come up. But thank you to Terrell and Amy for doing a lot of work on that grant.
Any questions for Greg or any of the principals? Moving on to legislative.
I have been sending some brief information out to the board through all this. The reason why is, and I've talked about this before, this is a pretty critical session. This is the second year of the legislative session, this biennium. First year they set the budget, second year they set policies. Now with the surplus, there's a lot of activity going on with the funds down there, and one of the biggest things they haven't been able to come up with a solution yet, and it does impact us, is the unemployment fund money that's owed back to the federal government. They don't do something pretty quick with that, pay that money back. That means every employer in the state of Minnesota is going to pay a higher unemployment tax, and that includes us. So we continue to work through C, to lobby with our legislatures, come up with a solution for that so they can pay off the feds what they own during the course of the unemployment funds we paid during the pandemic. Otherwise, our unemployment rates are going to go up. They did talk recently, they're finally talking about the compensatory funding. There is a committee working on it right now to find an appropriate student eligibility metric so that determines which one of our students in the past would have qualified for free and reduced lunch, which impacts our compensatory funding. I've talked about this in the past because they're not tracking it this year. Our district lost $260,000 this year. That's a pretty big chunk of money. They haven't come up with a solution for that yet. There's a lot of policies being kicked around. There still is talk of perhaps additional funding to schools. The percentage I keep seeing is 2%. That's being brought up all the time. But hopefully after the Easter break, the committees will start doing joint committee meetings between the House and the Senate to bring something forward. And this session by Constitution, has to end on May 23rd, so we hope they get it done by then. It's very difficult to track and project and create budgets for next year, as it always is, and it's even more difficult this year because we're hoping some things come through that will impact our budget positively, but we just don't know that right now, and we're just gonna have to take our best guess on the budget for next year.
What do you mean 2%?
2% on student aid. It's both in the governor's proposal and the House proposal to provide an additional 2% of student aid this year.
Why wouldn't they pay that?
It became a political issue. Hopefully they get it resolved. Keep the board updated.
Any questions for Greg? Moving on to item 9 would be consent agenda. Motion to approve the consent agenda as listed.
So, second.
As always, there's a decent amount of information in here. We did a little research on one of the issues today.
Effort real quick.
Well, it's, the issue is that we were fortunate enough to find a long-term sub who's qualified. And it's Randy's daughter. I would have assumed that he abstained from voting, but you educated us that that's not how it goes.
You cannot do it that way. Under current Minnesota State Statute 122A-40, which defines a teacher, for whatever reason, and I ran into this about 7 years ago, and I recall doing it, that when you're in the process of hiring a teacher, a person licensed as a teacher under that statute, it has to be a unanimous decision. And if a board member would recuse themselves from that, it would not be a unanimous decision. Why that is, I don't know why it is, but on all transparency, we want to make it very clear that under the consent agenda, under the personnel, we are hiring Maddie Duffner as a long-term sub for Ms. Seifert, who's out on maternity leave. Every district is dealing with shortages of subs. We are maybe in a bit of an anomaly here. We have a lot of teachers, including female teachers, that are out on maternity leave. That's a good thing. Bad thing is trying to find subs for those teachers. We have been fortunate that we've been able to cover those. We are very fortunate to have Maddie Duffner, who's done with college and is going to be pursuing her master's next year. We're very fortunate that we have those type of students with that type of quality and education and ability to step in, and otherwise we wouldn't be able to run some of these courses. But we just want to make it all very transparent to the public that we do have a board member's daughter that's being on the consent agenda, being proposed to hire, but it has to be a unanimous decision. And nobody can, that parent cannot recuse themselves from that vote.
And it's only a teaching contract.
It's only a teaching
You could hire a
contract.
para, that's a family member, or a kid who's working at the after-school program.
It would be defined as a teacher.
So if Kyle wasn't in on the phone call tonight, she couldn't get hired?
Nope, it'd be unanimous of the people present.
If I run out of the year sick,
We're good to go.
You're already here. I was here.
Don't do anything like that, I need her.
Yeah.
but just to be clear, normally I would recuse myself because this is nepotism, this is a conflict of interest. But the way the state law says, in order to resolve the nepotism problem, I need to vote.
It has to be, you need to vote, and it has to be a unanimous decision of the board,
Without anybody abstaining.
without anybody abstaining.
It just makes no sense. If it was a 6-0 vote, it's unanimous. Doesn't make sense.
Well, I guess it gives the opportunity still if the board thought it was an issue, somebody could
Vote it
vote
down
against
by
it,
one
vote
vote.
it down.
And don't feel pressure to vote yes just because.
I'd have a chat afterwards.
I don't care about you. It's the students we need her for.
Yes, yeah. Okay, I mean, that's,
It's a very odd situation.
It is a very odd situation because of her ability to be done with school at semester time and her have her available for this. And she is engaging in a long-term teaching contract. She does have the licensure for that. And so because of that, she falls under the state statute. If I hadn't run into this before, I wouldn't have known, but I ran into this before.
it's okay, it's clear, we'll follow it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So had you not run into it,
We would have unintentionally broke the law.
right, and who would have found it? No one.
Nobody.
Yeah.
We're just doing this in
Unless
all
somebody did.
transparency. Yep.
You know, I mean, just
Just asking.
Just from a public's perspective, we're doing this to basically dissolve the conflict by me voting yes.
Does anybody have any questions about that issue or anything else?
Personnel agenda. We do have a number of hires for summer camps, some teachers for next year that we're able to hire, and we continue to work on that. Believe me, the teaching shortage is impacting us just like it is everywhere else. And I work with the principals. We're meeting on a weekly basis now to try to resolve these issues for next year. And also not only resolve hiring teachers, but to hire teachers that we can, also those teachers that also have the ability to teach our college and the schools courses. We do not want to lose that. But there's a lot of other, some pairs that have been hired, community ed is hired for summer programming, and some teacher resignations, which causing us to hire and fill those positions. But also we do have a retirement of a custodian.
She's been with us, Karen's been 6 years.
6 years.
I'll say for my daughter, one of my daughters that had Miss Waring, she's going to be missed.
Beyond expressing our appreciation for the folks that are moving on to other opportunities and congratulating Karen on retirement. Is there any other comments or questions people have about the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Moving on to item 10 would be the treasurer's report. Motion to approve the treasurer's report, please.
So moved.
And a second.
I'll second it.
Highlights, comments?
Not a whole lot. You'll notice if you look at the expense revenue summary report that this year compared to last year, our food service expenses have gone up quite a bit. It's just due to the shortages. We've been very fortunate that we haven't had too many shortages. We had an issue with milk, I think, one time, but the cost of food has also gone up quite a bit. So we were awarded a grant from the USDA for about $26,000 to buy domestically grown, unprocessed, or minimally processed foods through food service. So there's a little extra money there to help out this year in regards to that. But other than that, not much going on.
You said domestically unprocessed food. What is that? Carrots or something?
Milk.
Domestically
Farm to table type products
Yeah,
like produce.
Pretty much, yeah. They just want us to minimally process foods. Local, buy local.
Any questions or comments from Ms. Hunska? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the treasurer's report, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Moving on to action items. a motion to accept the gifts and donations as listed. So moved. And a second. Listed here, wrestling program.
A lot of them for the wrestling program, but we did have a specific donation for a lift to lift some of our handicapped and PCD students out of a wheelchair. So it was very much appreciated they could donate to that, and I try to come up with a fair market value of about $1,200. For the rest of it's for all the community support that they had for the wrestling tournament that a few Fridays ago, over a month ago.
First section.
Yep.
Questions or comments beyond expressing our appreciation?
Roll call. Pat,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
Austin,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Kyle. Yes. Becky, yes. Motion approved.
Moving on to item B, policy 413. So the next four policies are the third reading.
Third and final review.
First of these four policies would be policy 413, harassment and violence. Motion to approve the policy as listed.
I so move.
And a second.
Okay.
Any changes or from the previous two readings?
No. No changes.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, hearing no questions or comments, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Moving on to item C would be policy 507. A motion to approve policy regarding corporal punishment.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
No changes.
No changes. Questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Moving on to item D, policy 721, uniform grant guidance policy regarding federal revenue sources. A motion to approve this policy
So moved.
and a second.
I'll second it.
No changes.
Questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The excitement continues. Item E would be policy 905 regarding advertising. Motion to approve school policy regarding this issue
I so move.
and a second.
Second. No changes.
No changes. Questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Great. Item F would be an MOU with the teachers regarding Zoom virtual subbing. Motion to approve this MOU as listed
So moved.
and a second.
Second.
Background, please.
This is an example why we need an MOU, because nowhere in the teacher's contract does it lay out this scenario or how a teacher shall be compensated for it. As I talked earlier about, we had some very large numbers of teachers that were out during the course of last year. And one of the ways we were able to fill that void is at the elementary level, when you have 3 grade level teachers teaching essentially similar things, not the same things. Well, what we were able to do at that time is when we did have a teacher that was missing, say in 3rd grade, and they were out for a number of days and we couldn't find subs, another 3rd grade teacher in their room would Zoom to the next 3rd grade teacher with a para supervising, and that teacher could teach both classes. We don't have anything in our contract. This is something that Cheryl and her staff were able to work out. But those teachers, like any other substitute teachers, they need to be compensated for doing that because that's a lot of work, knowing in advance of what to do, try to coordinate lesson plans, work with students. So because that does not exist in our current contract, I worked with MFT and also worked with the teacher negotiation committee to create this MOU that would compensate teachers for doing something that's not in the contract. And it is only for this year. It sunsets out at the end of this year, like most MOUs.
So it'll back pay. Is it retroactive?
Yes, yes. And thank you to all those teachers, because that's not easy. That was very difficult, and it was a great service of the district to be able to keep those students in class when we needed them. So great appreciation to those teachers that did it.
And the paras.
Yes, and the parents.
Questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the MOU regarding Zoom virtual subbing? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Item G would be a resolution to adjust the 21-22 school calendar. Motion, please.
I so move.
And a second.
Second.
Background.
Yep, this was an issue that we've been working on resolving, these two types of days. However, one of the days was the day after a long President's Day holiday. We did not send devices home that week before, that Thursday before. And because of that, there was no way to do it. So that's one of the days that probably needs to be made up with the teachers, because there's nothing we could do that day without the devices being sent home K through 6. The other day that would need to be made up, unfortunately, is for the funeral of our staff member. That day is being made up through an agreement with the union on working 8 extra hours outside the school calendar. However, that first day needs to be made up on June 2nd. So if we move that workshop day to June 2nd, which is a Thursday, and then the last teacher workshop day would be on June 3rd. So that would be the adjustment of the calendar. And also, I would ask the board to waive those 2 days missed by students who have done that in the past. We've talked about this before, continuing going to school the next week. That's not a good way to deal with this. So we're just going to, in the future, we'll continue to take a look at, but there's some pros and cons of sending devices home on a long weekend. A lot of them, sometimes they forget, they don't bring them back. So we'll continue to come up with some different plans, and we've discussed some different game plans because that's the point of having these devices, so you don't have to make up the day. So just the teachers will be making up that day. Paras also have been given the opportunity to make up that time during non-scheduled workshop hours and other times. So it would adjust the calendar to June 3rd being the last day of teacher workshop.
And just so the public knows, we have plenty of student contact days.
Yeah, plenty of student contact days. We have,
We're like one of the higher ones in the area
we are, they still.
of the student contact days.
So that we can waive those 2 days.
There is a minimum number of hours that high school students have to attend, 1,020 if I remember, and we are way over that. And that's the barometer by which they determine whether or not your calendar is sufficient enough by the state.
School districts were at least 5 days more than that.
Yes.
And you obviously work this out.
Yes. The makeup time, yes, by that level, yes.
Questions or comments? Concerns? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the resolution to adjust the 21-22 school calendar as Greg described? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Item H would be title program fiscal year 23. motion to approve the title program?
So move.
And a second,
Second.
annual.
Annual resolution. Believe it or not, you can opt out if you want. I would not make that recommendation. Provides a lot of funding and great programs for a lot of our students.
Questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Item I would be the bond referendum. We will discuss this further, but a motion to approve the bond referendum
So move.
and a second.
Second.
You want to give us?
A lot of discussion. Since I've been here, we've had a lot of discussion of some of these this strategic planning for facilities, what we need to do, what are some of the needs of the students and programs that we have. As was referenced earlier, we've had 3 working meetings since the beginning of the year of going through this, hashing through this, getting some public feedback, knowing what's happened in the past, knowing the needs aren't going to go away, knowing if we don't do something eventually, which eventually we're going to have to do, it just gets more expensive down the road. So this was a very difficult decision that from a person sitting on these meetings with the board members, there's a lot of moving pieces and there's a lot of decisions that have to be made with this. And there also are some timelines that we have to meet if we're going to move forward with a bond referendum anytime soon. So it wasn't for lack of time and lack of discussion that I think a decision has to be made tonight on moving forward with the board on a bond referendum.
So the last time that we discussed it at a board meeting, or it was mentioned a couple of months ago, but last fall, there was 2 questions, 37
Really.
million dollars. And then through the 3 meetings, that we got down to 1 question at 29.
$29,940,000.
That involves,
This will provide for funds for acquisition and betterment of school facilities, including the construction and equipping of a new career and technical center, auto shop addition, the renovation of existing career and technical education classrooms and labs, the construction and equipping of a new swimming pool facility, conversion of the existing pool facility into a multi-purpose activity space and storage, replacement of the high school gymnasium floor, remodeling and updates to the locker rooms and related spaces, HVAC improvements, replacement of tennis courts, ADA accessibility improvements, and site grading and utility improvements. As Dr. Heller talked about, when this was discussed last fall, there was the proposal at that time to move ahead with a $36 million referendum. And through a lot of hard work with the board, really taking a look at the needs and what we could probably do at this point in time, it is down under 30 million to 29,940,000 for those issues.
one question I have, this is a small question in the big picture of things, but this obviously doesn't involve new locker rooms.
No.
Renovating locker room, do we have, so then there's gonna be months without locker rooms, or would that just be the?
We would have to pair and share with the other current locker rooms that we have. Yep. Part of the whole proposal last fall was to build all these new things, which probably would have been nice. But the board really wanted to take a look at, see what are some cost saving measures we can take. And believe me, and I think the board would agree to this, renovating the current locker rooms probably isn't the best solution, but it's a better solution. It still fulfills the needs of what we have for our students and our activities. And also a big part of that was the meeting with the city of Melrose in really turning these things into community spaces that can be accessed by the community. And so that's why a lot of these things involve renovating those locker rooms, but still having a community type dressing area in the new pool area. It's not ideal, but it's gonna work. And then redoing the old pool into a flex space that could be used not only by the school, but also by the community. And also turning that gym into a useful facility as well. And I'm just paraphrasing a lot of the discussion and decisions that were made as I sat there as a bystander trying to help the board to navigate through this very difficult decision, because it is.
So if this, we have to vote on something that gets submitted to the state.
We have to vote on it with the understanding, with the architects understanding it. So then when we go to the next resolution, they now have that information and can develop a review and comment document to send to the state, because MDE in the end has to approve of this.
And if they don't approve it,
Then we don't go forward.
well, if they don't approve it, then you have to decide.
There would be specific
That would be
reasons that they
Yep.
wouldn't.
What would happen is generally the Minnesota Department of Education wouldn't approve it if you were spending way too much money trying to renovate old areas when the cost effectiveness of building new would be better. We could still move forward with that, but if we did, then the bond would have to pass by 60%, not a simple majority of or slightly over 50%. That's why every once in a while you hear about the school bond referendum moving forward, and it's got to get a 60% or better vote, because when they sent off the review and comment to the state of Minnesota, they didn't approve it. In those situations, you're spending too much money trying to fix old areas where it would probably be better to spend new money to just build new.
And if we were successful in getting funds from other sources, how would that factor in or compute to the?
That would be that was part of the discussion with the city of Melrose, and we will continue to move forward with that. If we can get donations from organizations, individuals, up until before the election, that would bring the cost of the property tax impact down. But we would have to secure those funds either in advance or following the election if we secure those funds, because I believe it's 6 months before those taxes kick in.
Yes. Well,
So if we could secure those donations within that time period before or after it, that would bring the cost of the tax impact down. And we will be pursuing that.
So when is the final verbiage of what goes to the voters?
That will be finalized in the April board meeting.
So the number,
The number will remain the same on the question, is how I understood it.
Yes,
No matter if we have secured funds or not.
we will
That-
still move
because
forward.
that
with
this
question
number is
has to
probably
get
gonna be
approved.
the number.
That will be the
Right.
number.
This will be, that's what I'm getting at.
Yep.
This will be the number, but then in the process of when it's presented to the voters, the tax impact,
We could actually adjust at that time if we had the numbers, if we had the funds secured. I mean, we'd have to have that money in the bank.
Right.
You can't go out and run a vote on promises that may or may not be kept. We have to have the money in place. And a lot of times, some of these donators, some of these larger schools that have passed it, their donations are contingent upon you passing the bond.
Which makes sense.
Yes. But if you hand us a check for $1 million and it doesn't pass, maybe we won't give it back. That doesn't happen.
Talk about time of the election. Timing is in August,
Yes.
same time the primaries are
Primaries
going
going
on.
on. So we'd have to pay very little additional cost for running a bond referendum.
but there would be some extra sites.
No,
I don't think so.
there's always the opportunity to come in and present an absentee ballot before the election. So we would just run the same sites that the county is running for the primary.
So what will the county run for the primary? Melrose,
I'd have to ask Tammy all of that question.
because New Munich won't have one. So can we run extra sites if we want to? Or can we not?
Costs money to do that.
Right, yeah,
And the reality is the county doesn't really own down those sites because they can't even find election judges to do that. That's why it's relatively expensive when we run it on our own.
This would be August.
9th, I think, August 9th.
So one of the reasons to do it in August is because it saves the district a good deal of money to not.
And I think for those that didn't sit in on this, this wasn't just a one meeting thing. Hash this out for a while. For those that don't know, we have to build this with it being tornado proof, over $2 million. It doesn't matter what you build now, any building has to be tornado proof. People, I've heard the comment, how did Painesville build what they built? Well, they built it before it became a requirement.
The 2020 law.
In the last meeting, we were talking about this, they already told us this plan, the pool plan has already gone up $1 million. Just from the start, from where we started to where we're at now, we're up another $1 million. It's not going to get cheaper. We tried to get this down. The other thing we find out, well, interest rates went up. That added more to the tax base already.
So the tech space, I mean, the actual square footage is not a huge amount. That has to be tornado proof.
No, if we would run these both together, it would be the pool space that would be tornado proof.
Because you have to meet the student body, correct?
yeah, certain square footage, and the pool would be large enough, so it wouldn't have to be
Didn't do
split.
the pool,
Then
tech
that,
space would need to be.
yes.
Yes. Mostly the automotive tech facility that would be built with that.
And there's a lot of ADA issues with the rooms, that we have to upgrade.
Bathrooms for our DCD program,
Elevator.
elevator for the locker rooms.
And it's the same elevator as for the,
Pool viewing area.
Yeah, being the first timer through this process, I was a little surprised. It's not as easy as going down to the lumberyard and getting a design. It's just, there's so many little gotchas. It's all for safety purposes. The tornado was the gotcha. How do we maximize the square footage you're dealing with taxpayer dollars? How do you keep these things to look down? It was quite the experience up to this point. But like I said, we were able to work it down some from the initial. Some.
and I think by the time we're at the point of going to the voters, we'll have a little more certain plan, but the idea would be the high school gym, the new pool, the old pool multi-use space would have a certain amount of community access, potentially even some during school hours.
Yep, we would try to create
Obviously,
some spaces.
some beyond school hours.
And that's not abnormal for other schools, because we talked about Painesville and Albany both having community access for our senior citizens during the day.
There's a fee though.
With a fee,
You don't have to be senior citizen.
you don't have to be a senior citizen, that you can go there. As long as you pay your fee.
That's right.
But even in talking to Stacy, we're fortunate that we have a lot of students that are lifeguard certified, so that could offer the flexibility to open up the pool during the day at certain times.
Study hall.
Students on the study hall or teacher assistant that we have right now.
The pool is 8 lanes, 2 diving boards,
Two diving
no
boards.
diving well or stretch pool.
No separate one.
Yeah.
It's all consolidated within one.
It's, I guess, the most basic pool that will offer us what we need, provide us what we need.
It is the cheapest to order, we can find out.
Yep.
And the cheapest to run without going to.
Questions?
We should be really excited. It's kind of a somber bunch.
Well, the price tag is.
The price tag is not nice, but. We're way to the point where we need to do some upgrades, so.
So what we're voting on,
Is to moving forward the one questioned on referendum with the current dollar amount and the facilities that I named off in the room. And the board decides this and it moves forward, we'll be able to make this information public. Obviously, we'll start spreading the word out on it.
and we'll submit to the state.
Yes, with the next resolution.
Questions or comments? Kyle, any questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Hearing none, all in favor of approving the bond referendum? Aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. All right, so this is approving, giving the superintendent authority to proceed with the bond referendum that we just voted for.
And submitting a review and comment to the state.
Can you say the next, that's clear.
Yeah.
All right. Questions or comments?
We need that motion.
Oh, motion.
So moved.
Second.
I'll do a second.
Questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion for adjournment
I so move.
and a second.
Second.
Okay.
Questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.